Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of Three Mike Sports. We're missing our regular host Andrew Kozic's for today's show, but I'm here as always, Patrick Stevenson, and after missing last week, we're back with Aiden Power. So today we're gonna have a special NCAA tournament preview show. So we're gonna jump right into college hoops. We'll start with the little conference tournaments. Aiden, what are your thoughts from the conference tournaments this past week?
I thought the two most exciting conference tournaments to watch were probably the ACC and the Big 12. Definitely the two strongest conferences in the country this year. Start off with the Big 12. I was really impressed with the play of Iowa State. People are starting to call them the comeback kids because of what they've done towards the end of the year and then into the Big 12 tournament. It's 5 comebacks in a row, starting with that senior night win over Oklahoma. Who else was I impressed with? I sort of liked what I saw from Kansas. They're really starting to play better on the offensive end. Not too sure what else. What do you think about the Big 12?
Yeah, I think there are a few good teams in the Big 12. Iowa State is the only team that really jumped us off the page to me. I think, well, you look at the tournament, teams like West Virginia, they didn't win the game in the tournament. They're still 5th seed in the tournament. It shows the committee obviously has a really strong impression of the Big 12. So the tournament, it was a fun tournament to watch. I don't see a lot of huge contenders from the Big 12, but it's definitely, they could be a player. We'll see about that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about the committee sort of really favoring the Big 12. I think when you look at the Big 12 this year, there's certainly a lot of parity, a lot of teams that are pretty evenly matched. And I think the committee took that, and they sort of assumed that because all these teams are evenly matched, they're all good, which I don't really see. I think Iowa State's good. They've been a little inconsistent throughout the year. But I think when you look at the rest of the teams, a lot of average teams. I thought West Virginia getting a 5 seed was ridiculous. Giving 3 of the 3 seeds to the Big 12 teams, Oklahoma, Baylor. I'm just not sure I thought they were deserving.
Yeah, I don't think any teams besides really Iowa State and Kansas are deserving of a top 4 seed really in the tournament. So I think all Oklahoma, Baylor, who else is there? West Virginia. I think they're all a little overseeded. It's still a fun conference to watch all year long.
Who's the last number 3 seed?
Last number 3 seed.
Oklahoma, Baylor, and Iowa State and Notre Dame, right?
Yes, Notre Dame. How could you forget about Notre Dame?
Oh, couldn't forget about Notre Dame. Speaking of Notre Dame, sort of transitioned over into the ACC tournament. Should we bring on our special guest for that?
Sure.
Let me see if I can get him on.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Hello?
Hey, you're on Three Mike Sports. We're talking about the ACC. We know you're our guy. What do you got on the ACC for us this year, Patty?
Well, guys, long-time listener, first-time caller, so I'm glad to be on the air. Absolutely love your daily podcast. Set my alarm to it.
It's weekly.
Well, talking Notre Dame basketball, when it starts with the Irish, it starts with Jerry and Graham. First-team All-American, led the Irish to their first conference championship this weekend against the University of North Carolina, led by Roy Williams. So anytime you have an athlete of that caliber who can lead a team somewhere where they've never gone before, it gives you great hope that the Irish can perhaps get over their first-round struggles in the tournament and actually do something in late March and hopefully into early April.
Yeah,
when I look at the Irish,
You talked about those early first-round struggles over the past couple of years for Mike Bray's team. Obviously, they weren't even in the tournament last year. Do you really think this team's different than those teams he's had in the past? Do you think they'll be able to get over that hump?
Well, that's a great question. And on campus, a lot of people have been debating it in the classroom. You got economic scholars, all these different type of academic people debating. But to me, it really comes down to the starting 5, right? Now, the Irish are let's just say they're a different caliber than any of the previous years. So people who are going to harp on the fact that the Irish haven't gone far in the tournament lately, I think that ends this year. Because the Irish, their starting five is basically doing what no other starting five in the country is doing. Now, we all know college basketball is transitioning into more of a three-point shooting game, and that's where the Irish excel. You have Pat Connaughton, who is shooting 40. I think three of their starters are shooting above 47% from beyond the 30, which is absolutely ridiculous. That's a very high percentage from a shot that is worth 3 points. Now, I do want to put some caution, put some red tape or some yellow tape around it, and this is why I don't yet believe that the Irish are going to be in the Final Four. They're not a Final Four team yet. It's because they don't have the down low presence that you see other teams have, specifically Duke.
Okay, I really love where we're going with this. We looked at that Duke Notre Dame matchup in the ACC tournament semifinal. What do you think about Mike Brey's strategy with not doubling down on Jahlil Okafor, saying that they're not going to get beat from the three-point line? Because obviously Mike Brey is someone who sees that college basketball is transforming into a three-point shootout sort of game. You let Zach August try and defend probably the best post player in the country one-on-one, and I thought he played pretty well. What do you think about that?
Well, the first thing you have to understand is that Notre Dame is not a strong closeout team defensively. And what I mean by that is if you do double someone in the post, like Okafor, like other teams have done with Duke, specifically UVA, who is much stronger defensively, they're quick enough to rotate. That is, they're able to switch defenders and still be able to get out there and close down the shooter. Now, Notre Dame does not have those athletes, right? If you're sending Steve Valentuna or whatever, or Pat Connaughton out there on the shooter, they're only going to be able to put a hand up, and if Ty or whatever, that point guard from Duke, fakes it, he's going to get an easy lane right to the hoop. So I love Coach Brey's decision to be like, okay, you're going to beat us down low. Okafor's going to score in the high 20s, low 30s. We're going to have Zach Augustine foul out, you know what I mean? But we're going to take that. We're going to take that, and we're going to hold your terrific guards, to simply being bounce passers into the paint. And for the Irish, that turned out to be a great success, and I think that is, how do I say this? I think that came about because the Irish had beat them first at Notre Dame, but had lost them again, and so they were able to learn through their experience. Now, when you come to the tournament time, Notre Dame hasn't faced many of the teams that they will possibly end up matching up against, right? So it's going to be a lot more first calculation type of formations and ideas defensively, right? And this is where it's really tough to see, can the Irish make a run when they're not a very strong defensive team unless they come up with some type of, specific system against each team.
All right, we're talking about the Irish making a run. Probably time to start transforming over into the NCAA tournament talk. The Irish are in the Midwest region, arguably the toughest region in my opinion. We'll start with Patrick Stevenson. What do you think about Notre Dame? How far do you see them going in this Midwest region?
Well, in my picks, I had them going all the way to the Elite Eight before losing to Kentucky. I think in the bottom half of that bracket, there are tough teams, including Butler and Texas. Whoever wins that game could be dangerous to Notre Dame in the second round game. And I think Wichita State could be a sleeper in that bottom half. I really like Notre Dame. They answered a lot of questions I had about them last week. Obviously, a terrific shooting team, shooting almost 40% from beyond the arc. So I like Notre Dame getting all the way to the Elite Eight, but I don't think they'll be able to match up with Kentucky once they get there.
Yeah, you know what? What I really like about this Midwest region is some of the matchups that we're going to see, not in this round of 64, but once we get into the round of 32, some of the matchups there. Kentucky's second round matchup could potentially be against Purdue. And that's an interesting matchup because Purdue's probably the only team in the country that can match up with Kentucky's size. Purdue's got two 7-footers. They play in a tough Big Ten schedule. I'm not saying Purdue's got a legitimate shot of beating Kentucky. That's another really interesting matchup. Obviously, you touched on Wichita State versus Kansas. Obviously, some in-state rivals there. Kansas, to this day, they still refuse to schedule Wichita State. I know that's a sore spot for the Shockers. Patrick, what do you think about some of these matchups we're going to see?
Well, I mean, I think you guys did a great job of analyzing the Midwest. Definitely, obviously, as a Notre Dame fan, I'm definitely interested to see who comes out of that Texas Butler um, game. And even below, you got Wichita, you got Indiana, you got KU. Kansas did look good. They didn't win their conference championship. So, yeah, I do think that the Irish have a chance going to the Elite Eight. And top of the bracket, yeah, you make a great point about Purdue. They're two big 7-footers. But just based on the 34-0 season, you got to basically say Kentucky is going to be a shoo-in for, the Elite Eight, most likely the Final Four.
All right, so
whatever happens there, it happens.
So do we all agree that this Elite Eight matchup in the Midwest is going to be Kentucky taking on Notre Dame?
Yeah, I think so. I agree with that.
Oh, so let's talk about that matchup. I've got Notre Dame in that one. I think that while this is a really strong Kentucky team, they are a very beatable team at the same time. A lot of youth here, and people talk about this Kentucky defense, how they're the best defense in the country. Kentucky has yet to face a team with a top 25 offense, and Notre Dame sits right atop that list. They're the #1 offense in the country. As you mentioned, they have 4 guys who can just knock down threes from anywhere on the court. Zach August is really starting to play better lately. I love the play of freshman Bonzi Colson. He comes in, starting to give them more and more minutes. Mike Bray's starting to have more and more confidence in him. And then I also like VJ Beacham. He's the 7th man. They only go 7 men deep. He comes in for about 15 minutes a game. He can hit a 3. He's got good length. What do you guys think about this Irish team and how they match up with Kentucky?
I think it's a tough matchup for Notre Dame there.
I think any team is going to have problems matching up with Kentucky. But I have to agree with you. The Irish offensively, the way they move the ball, the way they space, especially more recently, the way they've been attacking the rim. Something that they didn't do for about the first 2/3 of the season. I think with that late development of Pat Connaughton and some of these guards who are really good three-point shooters, finally choosing to put the ball on the floor to get to the rim, get to the charity stripe, I think their offense gives them, puts them in a position to win almost any game.
Patrick?
I think Kentucky is they're an all-round, they don't have any weaknesses team. I think it will take a team that is an all-round team, excellent offensively and defensively. They can get inside, they can shoot the 3. I don't think Notre Dame quite has every single aspect they need to be able to contend with the top team in the country, really.
Yeah, I think the one question mark for this Notre Dame team has got to be their depth. Kentucky's basically a team that has 10 starters. I mean, John Calipari doesn't like the way some people are playing. He'll just throw 5 new guys in there. Where Notre Dame, they have 4 guys who average more than 30 minutes a game, which is just ridiculous for an NCAA tournament team. They don't get a lot of substitutions in. I think that could be an issue if they do play Kentucky. But ultimately, I like the Irish. Patrick?
Yeah, no, I completely. I mean, I don't completely agree. I think that's a bold call taking the Irish over such a good Kentucky team. I was hoping we could talk about the Western part of the bracket, but not the West. Yes, the West. The West is what I think is the most intriguing setups.
All right, what do you think about the West?
Well, in particular, the 4-13 matchup. Harvard, UNC. I was highly recruited by both of these teams. So they're both very dear to my heart. Obviously, Harvard for academic reasons and UNC for ping pong. But Harvard had a big win against Yale this past weekend, which I think gives them something. And UNC did lose to Notre Dame. I know they weren't expected to be in the finals, but I don't know. I'm tugged both ways, and I can't help but thinking, you know what? Maybe Harvard representing the Ivy League might be able to knock off UNC, and then they got a bit of a run.
Yeah, Harvard's a surprisingly popular pick taking on UNC. They've had 2 upsets in the tournament in back-to-back years that they're coming off of. But I gotta say, I watched their game on Saturday against Yale. This Harvard team is not the same team that they've had in years past. They have struggled to score the ball throughout the year. And if you look at their most difficult matchup all year was against Virginia, a team that UNC just beat this past weekend. Harvard lost by 50 to Virginia. I think we could really easily have a blowout on our hands. What do you think about that, Patrick?
Yeah, I think North Carolina is a team that really came on strong at the end of this year. I think they're a real contender. I'm not too sure about Harvard. I haven't seen much of them. Obviously, they're a popular pick because of their previous years and such a well-known school. But I don't think they'll be able to contend with guys like Marcus Page, Justin Jackson, and JP Tokoto of North Carolina. I think North Carolina, led by Roy Williams, I think they can beat anyone in this tournament. I actually have North Carolina upsetting Wisconsin in the Sweet 16. So I don't really know if Harvard will have I don't know if they have a big chance of getting this upset here.
Yeah, Patrick, part of what I love about this North Carolina team right now is earlier in the year their success was basically dictated by how well Marcus Page played, whereas later on we've seen guys like Bryce Johnson, JP Tokoto, they've really started to fill in around him, and they're really playing as more of a team. I think this is going to be a dangerous team to look forward to out of this West region. Patrick, what else do you got for us in the West?
Well, from the West, I mean that was the big matchup. I know Ohio State VCU, and all these games are obviously very intriguing. It is the NCAA tournament, but when I flip the bracket and I go conversely to the East, no team really stands out to me, and I don't know if this is because I'm not sold on UVA. Villanova hasn't really swayed me as really a team that can definitely go forward. I've just never seen Villanova have great success in the tournament, and so I find myself going back to the ACC again, which I think is the top conference this year, and I have Louisville as my Final Four coming from the East.
Patrick, what do you think about this?
I think the East is. I'm not too sure about Villanova being number one seed in the East. I'm really impressed with Virginia, obviously, the best defensive team in the country. I think they're a team that other teams who don't have an elite offense might be scared to go up against that defense. They force so many turnovers. They've had some scares, but I don't think Virginia is my pick to get out of the East. I have them going all the way to the national championship game. Yeah, I like Virginia in this region.
Yeah, I agree. I think this East region is going to be all about defense. You got two of the top defenses in the country. I personally think Virginia is the top defense in the country. And then you also got Northern Iowa out of the Missouri Valley, really strong defensive team. I think I look at this Virginia team. They got Justin Anderson back for the ACC tournament, but you could tell he just still wasn't 100%. So essentially, they've lost one game this year at full strength, and that was against a number one seed in Duke. So this is a Virginia team that doesn't have too many losses on their resume. Probably the best defense in the country. A lot of people think Kentucky, but Virginia's actually played some quality offense this year, unlike Kentucky. I really like Virginia. I think this is going to be a really, really interesting region to take a look at. Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, you guys both put really good arguments. Obviously, you are two of the finest experts on sports, but specifically college basketball. And so, before I have to depart, I want to just quickly touch on the South. And I know I've said that the West was the most intriguing, but the South is the one that I am probably most excited about. And by that, I mean I have my biggest upset coming out of the South in the first round. And I know you guys have a lot of Canadian listeners. I don't want to alienate the audience here, but I don't believe in Gonzaga. Ever since they played that Olynyk guy, who's now with the Celtics, I know that the Zags have been receiving a lot of attention. I don't believe that they play in a hard conference. I believe they're highly overrated. I have NDSU upsetting them in the first round. That's my 15-2 biggest upset first round coming out of the South.
Wow, that's certainly a pretty big upset. I agree with you about Gonzaga being overrated. I think Patrick probably does as well. We both think this West Coast Conference doesn't have a lot of depth, not too many good teams in there. Obviously, their loss at home to BYU later on in the season, that really hurt them, probably the reason they didn't get a 1 seed. Patrick, what do you think about this bold prediction coming out of the South?
Well, I'm not too impressed with the South as an overall region. I'm also not impressed with Gonzaga, but because I don't see too many teams that are able to contend with them. I actually do have Gonzaga going all the way to the Final Four. I have them coming out of that region. I've but I think this is a region where we will see a number of upsets. In fact, I picked Eastern Washington over Georgetown, and I also picked UCLA over SMU. And another one I didn't pick, but I was thinking about picking was Stephen F. Austin over Utah. Utah is a team that is, I thought they were underwhelming recently. They lost to Oregon in the Pac-12 semifinals, and then Oregon went on to get blown out by Arizona. I don't think there's a lot of depth in the Pac-12. UCLA is this, I think, was the second best team at the end of the year. I think UCLA could have they could make a run as an 11 seed. I think that I've got Iowa State I think Iowa State versus Gonzaga is a matchup I'm really intrigued by. Obviously, Georges Niang and Iowa State, they've really come on. Well, they've been good all year, but they're playing really good basketball recently. But I do have Gonzaga. I just think this is their year.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Iowa State's a really dangerous team coming out of the South. You were talking about the South being a region that's sort of full of upsets, and I couldn't agree more. I've got Stephen F. Austin, the 12 seed, beating Utah. I really like the way Stephen F. Austin defends. Their defense is pretty much what led them to a win over VCU last year as an upset. I also have Eastern Washington over Gonzaga, or sorry, Georgetown. Georgetown hasn't had much success in March over the past couple of years, and I really don't think that'll continue this year. Eastern Washington's also got the nation's leading scorer, Tyler Harvey. That guy can shoot the lights out. He can just score so easily. I think Eastern Washington can very easily take down Georgetown. What do you think about those upsets, Patrick?
Oh, I'm always been a big Georgetown hater, especially after her sister went there. So, I don't think Georgetown's a very good team. I was surprised that they got the number 4 ranking. I would love to see Eastern Washington. Besides the upset of Gonzaga losing that I have, I think that the hot team in this conference, I think Duke is the solid number 1 choice. I think they'll end up in the Final Four. But the team that I really like is UCLA. And I know they did not win the Pac-10 championship this weekend. They lost to a very, very, very good Arizona team, something that we haven't touched yet on the show. But I think UCLA, I have them beating SMU. I got them, making a run to the Elite Eight, which is pretty far for an 11 seed. But I think the way that they space the ball, reminds me a lot of the Notre Dame spacing. I think they have I want to say a wider range of guards that it can attack. Not quite as good shooters. So, I haven't watched a lot of them, but what I saw from them this weekend definitely made me think of some of those better ACC teams. And so I'm excited to see how they fare.
That's a good point. I know you touched on Arizona. I know Patrick's a huge Arizona fan and a fan of the Pac-12. Patrick, what do you think about Arizona? Have far do you think they can go in this tournament?
I think they can win it all this year. I don't think they have too much of a threat until the Elite Eight, when it will be Wisconsin or maybe North Carolina. But I think Arizona, obviously, Brandon Ashley is playing great basketball. They dominated the Pac-12 tournament, apart from their game against UCLA. But I think they just look like one of those power teams that can win it all. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson's obviously a great young player. Stanley Johnson, Pac-12 Freshman of the Year. I think they've really got, they are, to be honest, they are my pick to win it all this year. So I really like Arizona.
I think this Arizona team, Stanley Johnson's a fabulous scorer. But I think their success is going to be determined by the play of T.J. McConnell, their point guard. Obviously a really gritty player, gets a lot of steals. I think he could have a serious impact on how Arizona does in this tournament.
Yeah, he needs to have a big tournament for them. He is their leader. young team compared to other teams in the Pac-12, which are more led by juniors and seniors. They were able to get out of the Pac-12 relatively unscathed because TJ McConnell is really their man that keeps them together, and he leads the way. And Sean Miller's done a great coaching job for them.
All right, guys. I think it's time to get into some predictions. Patrick, we'll start with you on the phone. Who's your Final Four? Who do you got in the national championship game? Who's taking it all?
Well, at the beginning of the show, I try to come off as an objective, an expert, not an expert, analysis. But to be honest, I got Notre Dame winning it all. I got them upsetting Kentucky to get to the Final Four. Coming out of the West, I actually have Arizona. They're my one non-ACC team. I think they're playing really good basketball. Out of the East, I got Louisville coming out of that 4 seed. And in the South, I have Duke. I think the best player in college basketball plays on a very good team. And as much as I'd like UCLA to upset them in the Elite Eight, I got Duke. And so my finals is Duke Notre Dame. And of course, the Irish take 3 from Duke this year, and the Irish win it all.
I like those predictions. Patrick, what do you think?
Yeah, I know Andrew Kozix isn't here, but he also has Notre Dame. I think he has them winning it all this year. I think I mentioned all 4 of my Final Four teams already, but I got Kentucky coming out of the Midwest. They obviously be challenged. I think the 2 teams that can challenge them are Maryland and Notre Dame, but I don't think they'll lose either of those games. This East, I have Virginia coming out. I think Northern Iowa is this team that could give them some trouble. Obviously, you said they're a great defensive team, but I do have Virginia coming out of that region. Then the South, I'm not really buying Duke. They didn't win the ACC regular season or the tournament. I'm not sure if they're really a number 1 seed. Obviously, I have Gonzaga. And then I have Arizona beating North Carolina in the Elite Eight in the West region. And so the Final Four, I have Arizona over Kentucky. I think Arizona is one of those all-around teams that can beat Kentucky. They're both really young teams. Arizona plays great offense, plays great defense. They've got guys who can shoot the ball. They've got guys that can go up inside. And I've got Virginia's defense beating Gonzaga on the other side. And then I think it comes down to Arizona and Virginia for my national championship, and I picked the all-around Arizona Wildcats to win that one.
Those all seem like good predictions. Like Patrick, I've actually got 3 ACC. Like you, I've actually got 3 ACC teams in the Final Four as well, although my teams are a little bit different. I've got, as I said earlier, I've got Notre Dame beating Kentucky. I think the Irish's offense is just too powerful. I don't think Kentucky's seen an offense like it all year. Then in the West, I've got North Carolina taking on Arizona. I love the way UNC is playing lately. That team with Marcus Page, he's a phenomenal player. I've got Carolina advancing to the Final Four as well.
You're taking Carolina to the Final Four?
Yes, I am.
To quote Shea, that's absurd!
All right. Will you let me continue? Then in the East, I think Villanova is by far the worst number 1 seed. I was really underwhelmed with them in the Big East tournament. I actually think they're going to lose in the round of 32 to NC State, which is just going to prove how much stronger the ACC is than everyone else. Coming out of the East, I've got Virginia beating Northern Iowa in the Elite Eight game, which I think will be the most boring game in college basketball all year. There's a really defensive struggle. That game's going to be played in the 50s for sure. Wait, did I say I have Virginia?
Yeah, I think you did.
Well, I guess I have 4 ACC teams in the Final Four, actually.
You have 4 ACC teams in the Final Four.
I have 4
ACC
ACC teams.
basketball, and you're going with one conference?
I'm going with one conference. In the South, I got Duke. I think they're going to play Iowa State, who is a phenomenal team. If Iowa State was in any other region, no, not actually. If they were in a different region, I would probably have Iowa State in the Final Four as well. But I think Duke's too strong. I think Duke's the best team in the country. I think Duke's best game is better than Kentucky's best game. I think Duke's best game is better than Notre Dame's best game. So I've got Duke and Notre Dame going at it in the finals. Like Patrick, it's going to be the 4th game between these two all year. And although I said Duke's the best team in the country, I don't think they're going to come to play in the finals. I've got Notre Dame beating them for the third time this year. Go Irish.
You have the same finals that I have?
I have the same finals that you have.
let me say one thing about college basketball before I let you guys wrap up your show. You said something about the most boring game in college basketball, and it'll be stuck in the 50s. I might be a traditionalist, but I don't think there's anything wrong with having 50 points on the scoreboard at the end of the game. You know, it's not. And I disagree with your terminology of defensive struggle. I think when defenses can hold teams under 60, you know, it makes it a little bit more like baseball, a little less scoring, and there's a lot more pressure on each possession. You know, sometimes the NBA, when they run away with games into the 130s or whatever, it's like each possession doesn't mean anything. You know, but if both teams are playing great defense and conversely they're struggling to score, that to me is just as exciting a game as like 81-80 finish.
All right, that's an interesting point, Patrick. My question is, did you actually watch the Sun Belt Championship game this weekend?
Texas Southern, Texas State,
Georgia
39-38.
State. 38-36 was the final score of that one. I mean, I tried watching that game. That was a really difficult game to watch.
Was it Aiden?
I didn't catch it live, but I TiVoed it, so I watched it last night before I came on the air today.
Oh, good stuff.
And the difference there is with the Texas Southern, Texas State, those are two of not some great teams, but if Virginia, Northern Iowa, two elite defensive teams, whereas Texas Southern, Texas State are more of just weak offensive teams, I think it would be much more exciting to see those two great teams go at it defensively.
All right, Patrick, we're gonna let you go. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me on the air, boys. Good times.
All right.
All right, I think we're going to get into quick picks now. We're picking 3 of the 4 8 versus 9 seeds here. So the first game we've got is Cincinnati versus Purdue. Aiden, how do you see that going?
I sort of talked about Purdue earlier. I love their size. I watched the American Athletic Conference championship game between UConn and SMU. I do not think that's a very strong conference. Cincinnati's probably the 3rd or 4th best team there. I've got Purdue in this one. Just a stronger conference, more height. I love the Boilermakers.
All right, well, Andrew Kozik sent in his quick picks. He went with Cincinnati in this game. I'm going with them. I've got Cincinnati. I think Purdue, they obviously play in a great conference, but I'm not too sure if they're really a strong contender out of there. So I've got Cincinnati. The next game is NC State, LSU. What do you think, Aiden?
Yeah, I sort of talked about this one earlier. I think NC State's going to win this one and then beat Virginia in the round of 32 as well. I don't think the SEC is a strong conference, and I don't think LSU is a strong team.
I think LSU, to me, is an undervalued team. Well, I'll start with Kozik picks NC State. I think I went with LSU, even though it's an 8 versus 9 seed. I thought this is a big upset to pick. I think LSU, they've got some good playmakers. I think they might have been the 2nd best team in the SEC. I think they were better than Arkansas. I think they could make a decent run in the tournament, but whatever happens, either of those teams could end up beating Villanova the next round. And the last game we've got Oregon versus Oklahoma State. What do you think?
I like Oklahoma State. I like the Cowboys. I know I've been hating on the Big 12 lately, but it is a stronger conference than the Pac-12 overall. I'm not convinced with Oregon's style of play. I don't like the way they play in the Pac-12. I'm just not really comfortable picking that team. I gotta stick with the Cowboys.
All right, and Kozik's went with you with Oklahoma State. I'll go against you. I went Oregon. I think Oklahoma State's an underwhelming team. They were under 500 when it came to Big 12 play. Obviously, that's a good conference, but it's not loaded with talent. But behind really Iowa State and Kansas, I think Oklahoma State's a bit overseeded here. Oregon had an impressive win over Utah in the Pac-12 semifinals. Obviously, not a great showing in the finals against Arizona, but I've got Oregon in a close one. I think it could be a very high-scoring game as well.
All right. Just a heads up, guys. We're doing a NCAA tournament 3 Mike Sports group. We're probably going to be posting that with the link to this video, so definitely watch out for that. My final prediction of the night. Tomorrow night we got Dayton. Who's Dayton playing? Boise State. Dayton's playing Boise State in what's actually a home game. It's not essentially a home game. It is a home game. It's being played at their home arena. I like Dayton in that one. And after that, I like Dayton making a run to the Sweet 16. Over the past 4 years, 3 teams from the first 4 have made it to the Sweet 16. And that's just a testament to how much this tournament's about momentum. 7 of the last 10 champions have won their conference tournament going into it. That's something to watch out for in this tournament. Whoever can get the momentum starting to roll. Dayton made a run to the Elite Eight last year. I got a chance to watch them in person. Dejon Pierre, love Coach Archie Miller. I think the Flyers are another team to watch out for this year.
For sure, and I don't really like picking teams that have to play in the first 4 because you never know who's going to win those games, but that's going to be a great game. I think Dayton could make a run, and the other team playing in the first 4 that could make a decent run is BYU. They have to get past Ole Miss, but after that, they've got 2 teams that might be a little overseeded in Xavier, and then it would be Baylor if they can win both those games, so they're another team in the first 4 that could make a run.
Yeah, I agree. I actually have both those teams winning and getting into the round of 32. I've got Dayton in the Sweet 16. I don't think that BYU can beat Baylor, but that'll definitely be a good game.
Yeah, it will be a great game. So I guess that wraps it up. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. If you have any questions, use the hashtag Ask3Mikes. You can ask us questions on Twitter or Facebook now. Anything to say?
Stay up, 3 Mikes Nation.